Well, thank you very much indeed, and good evening, everybody. Well, that is an absolutely fantastic welcome, and thank you. And of course, I was here a few times earlier this year, out supporting candidates in the run-up to those Norfolk County Council elections, and I have to say, to be introduced this evening on stage just a few weeks later by David Bick, Reform Leader of Norfolk County Council. And we're off to a pretty good start. The Chief Executive's gone, great shame, I'm sure. There are one or two council staff who are busy wearing their pride badges, who apparently are considering resigning. How about that? Oh dear. I do that. This isn't being recorded. We're off to a good start, and I'm very, very proud of the work we've done. And of course, we won here, we won in Suffolk, we won in Essex, and these parts of England have been Conservative forever. But now, they're Reform. Now they're Reform. Well, the overriding national message, of course, was vote Reform and get, anyone remember it? Starmer! Vote Reform and? It was inevitable from the early hours of the 8th of May that what we've done, especially in the north of England, especially in Sunderland, especially in Wakefield, St Helens, and down into the West Midlands as well, our result on that day guaranteed that this useless, inept Prime Minister could not survive. And of course it was Mr Burnham in Makerfield that dealt the final blow. And there was an irony, because we'd been saying a few weeks before, vote Reform and get Starmer out, and suddenly it was vote Burnham and get Starmer out, which is why he won the by-election as handsomely as he did. Another thought on it that I had over the last few weeks was that when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London, remember, he was incredibly popular, wasn't he? Because we had the Olympics and he could cut ribbons and meet celebrities and ruffle his hair, and he was enormously popular. And yet, by the time he became Prime Minister and afterwards, he became rapidly very unpopular. And the same goes for Mr Burnham, who appears to be very popular as the long-term Mayor of Greater Manchester. And that's because mayors are predominantly a civic role as opposed to a political role making tough decisions. So there's no question that Burnham is going to be our Prime Minister. There is no question that he is going to replace Keir Starmer. And today we got the first indications of what a Burnham premiership may be all about. Devolution. I bet that's top of your agenda, sir, isn't it, every evening when you get home? You say, of all the problems we face as a country, there's one easy solution. More devolution. Well, amidst all of the vague, chummy waffle that we heard today, devolution does not guarantee better results. Just think about it. Has devolution for London, in the shape of Sadiq Khan, given us safer streets in London? Has devolution in Wales, after a quarter of a century of Labour, given a better health service or a better education service? No, it's given the worst in the whole of the United Kingdom. And has devolution in Scotland cleaned up Scottish politics? I should cocoa. So there is no guarantee whatsoever that devolution of itself will solve anything. And frankly, to have spent so much of this first big speech talking about it is deflecting from the real issues. And devolved mayors with tax-raising powers will only mean one thing: an increased tax burden across the country. Now, arguably, the right local mayor with the right priorities might do some good. But devolution will not deal with some of the absolutely fundamental problems, frankly, almost existential problems, that our country faces. It won't deal with any of them. And there was one thing, and Burnham spoke without notes today, which is impressive, because poor old Starmer. I first spotted him on July the 5th, 2024. You know, he'd known for a year he was going to be elected as Prime Minister. So you'd have thought he might have had half a clue what he was going to say. And he stood there in Trafalgar Square, 11 o'clock in the morning, giving his victory speech, and in 9 minutes, he looked down at his notes 158 times. Well, I compared him to a pigeon in Trafalgar Square, you know. The resignation speech was shorter, but even then he looked at his notes 150 times. Now, Burnham can speak without notes, which actually is quite a refreshing change. But there was one thing he forgot to mention today. I can't hear you. He couldn't hear you either, so he forgot it. He did not mention it. Is devolution going to stop the boats crossing the English Channel? Is it hell? Does Burnham have a plan of any kind to stop the boats crossing the Channel? No, he doesn't. Is Burnham committed to continued membership of the European Convention on Human Rights? Yes, he is. The very same convention that the Conservatives in power had 14 years to deal with and did nothing, but now tell you they've decided it's time to leave. Well, I don't trust them either to deliver, given what they did in 14 years in office. But he should have mentioned it because it is a massive issue. And today we learn some figures that have come out of the Home Office today, well, they're not exactly written up loudly and advertised. There were 34,400 asylum cases granted last year under Article 8 of the European Convention. Article 8 being the right to a family life. Even the Home Office estimate that those 34,400 people who were granted asylum last year alone will, during their lifetimes, cost the British taxpayer £5 billion. £5 billion from just 1 year, from just one article of the ECHR. And we will work out and calculate what the cost of that has been over the course of the last 5 and 10 years, and yet let you know. When people tell us there's no money, that cuts can't be made, well, there's £5 billion a year that a reform government would save, and we do it in the first few months of office, no question. And what's also been interesting is to see Shabama Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who in November, I thought she was on the verge of joining reform. I mean, she made Zia Yusuf look moderate. It's extraordinary. Coming up with tough policies. Well, one of those was to stop the Boris wave from getting indefinite leave to remain. Because once people get indefinite leave to remain, they qualify for benefits for the rest of their life and the ability to bring their extended families. And the mood sensibly said, we can't grant that after 5 years, we'll delay it to 10 years. Now, we'd have removed it completely, but at least she was kicking the can down the road of what will be a problem that could cost us hundreds of billions, I mean hundreds of billions, in the decades to come. But now that open borders Andy is on the verge of becoming Prime Minister, she's changed her position. We also learned today that anyone that's come here illegally and been granted asylum will in future have the ability to apply for full British citizenship. It is absolutely disgusting and wrong in every way. Having a British passport should be an honour and a privilege that is only accorded to those who were born here or choose to come, integrate and accept our way of life and be a part of our communities. So devolution won't solve that, and devolution won't solve our spiralling national debt. Again today, we heard the leader of the Conservatives talking about how indebted the country is. Well, all that Reeves and Starmer have done is to top up a problem that they inherited from the Conservatives. You know, our national debt is spiralling out of control. Our borrowing is rising faster than any other country in the world, with the exception of Botswana. It's true. Botswana's really got problems. But annual debt interest repayments of £110 billion a year, which dwarfs not just the defence budget, but dwarfs the education budget. Devolution won't solve any of those things. I'm not sure Mr. Burnham has the resolve to deal with those things. Indeed, he said last year, we don't need to worry about the bond markets. Well, Warren Buffett famously once said, you may not worry about the bond markets as a government, but the bond markets will certainly worry about you. How will devolution solve the nightmare, embarrassing and shaming position that we've got into with defence? Could you believe it? A British sovereign base in Cyprus comes under rocket attack. Send the Royal Navy to the rescue. Captain Pubwash could have now done something like that. And yes, 3 weeks and 1 day later, a Royal Naval vessel arrived, only within 3 days to break down again and go back into dock. Now I laugh about it, but actually you've got that, and you've got the persecution of British veterans going on for events that happened in many cases over half a century ago. Something truly shameful and shaming is happening to a nation that used to pride itself on the men and women that served in its proud armed forces. Will devolution solve any of that? Does Mr. Burnham even understand this subject? I doubt it. But the other thing he said was, give me 10 years. Give me 10 years. 10 years more than Peter Murrell got in prison. Give me 10 years and I'll lift this country up. Well, I'm sorry. We haven't got 10 years. The trouble we're in, if we go on like this, in 10 years, it will be unrecognisable. What the public want is fast action to get a grip on all the things that are going wrong in our nation. But you see, truth of it is that Andy Burnham may say our politics in Westminster is broken, but he doesn't accept the country's broken. Kelly Badnock says Britain is not broken, because if she says that, she has to admit that 14 years of conservatism is what broke it. And we're the ones saying Britain is broken. And until you recognise the depth of the problem. Until you get the right medical analysis of how grave the situation is, until you do that, you won't be prepared to undergo the radical surgery that is needed to save the life of the patient and to turn this situation around. We haven't got 10 years. In our view, this is urgent. And I want to say this. This man was not even elected in 2024 on that manifesto. He's about, through a political coup, to become the next Prime Minister with an agenda completely different to the one that this government was elected on. He has no mandate. And given that this is our 7th Prime Minister in 10 years, I mean, can you believe it? We used to laugh at the Italians, didn't we? I think Giorgia Meloni is laughing at us now. But given this is the 7th Prime Minister in 10 years, I would say the British public have had enough of the game of musical chairs that has been going on in Downing Street. If he wants to be Prime Minister, he must have a mandate. Now, Mr. Cleverly was on the telly yesterday. I'm sure there were some big fans of Mr. Cleverly here in this room. So, well, basically, we don't want a general election. What he's really saying is, we'd rather Labour stayed in than risk a reform government. Well, our message is clear. As and when Burnham becomes Prime Minister, this country deserves and must have a general election to sort out who is running the country, because he will have no mandate from day one, and in failing himself, he'll fail the country even more. There must be an election. Now, I've come back to Norfolk tonight, not just to celebrate the events of May the 7th, although that would be justification enough in itself. I never need any excuse to have a party and celebrate devolution. Because life is just too short, isn't it? But I come back tonight with a specific purpose, and that is an election that is taking place here on July the 16th, with postal votes due to drop, I think, is it tomorrow or the day after? It's pretty imminent. And so I've come here today to talk about this by-election. Now, the experiment with police and crime commissioners was an idea back in 2012 to get somebody in the public vote to oversee policing methods and budgets. Of itself, I thought originally it was quite a good idea. But we're not like America. In America, they vote for the local sheriff. In America, they vote for the local judge. And for some reason, we don't like to be asked to go out to vote too often. This by-election is in many ways unnecessary, but the incumbent, who won it by a narrow margin as a Labour candidate, is standing down. And yes, there is a cost. There is a cost to council taxpayers in Norfolk of £2 million to hold this election for a post that probably will only last for the next 2 years. But it's happening. We're going to contest it, and I would say to you that whilst Norfolk may not appear to be as crime-ridden as many of our big cities, it is a remarkable fact that reported robbery in this county is up by 26% since 2024. That's pretty shocking, isn't it? And rural crime. It's never talked about, is it, nationally? Rural crime. The theft of property, assaults on individuals. Rural crime, I would contend in Norfolk, is at a point of almost being out of control. Any in this room from the farming community will, I know, back me up wholeheartedly. But there's something deeper about policing as a whole. That our police bosses and police forces have gone from being tough, respected enforcers of the law, people who perhaps, when you were young, you feared, and certainly if you're intent on crime, you definitely feared, to becoming almost a political movement, where they write their race action plans, where they tell police officers not to police everybody the same, to police some communities differently to other communities, on the basis of ethnicity. Folks, this way lies division, resentment and disaster. And we saw that played out tragically on the streets of Southampton with that horrendous case of the murder of that poor 18-year-old boy, Henry Novak. We as a party do not believe in positive discrimination. We as a party do not believe in positive action. We as a party say, regardless of your sex, your gender, your age, your race, we believe you should be treated equally by the police and by the law. And with the end of two-tier care, let's get a police and crime commissioner in Norfolk that makes sure there is no two-tier policing in this county. I really can't think of a better qualified candidate to be police and crime commissioner. He looks all genial and jovial, but he's not really, you know. I mean, this is the best known living detective in the country. So I'm here today not just to support Colin Sutton, who I think is a splendid fellow and would actually shake policing up in this county to a level where there can be a proper debate about the things that matter. But I've also come to speak to all of you and say this. These elections historically have very low turnouts. And being that it's a by-election, it may well have a very low turnout. The more active we can be, the more active you can be to persuade people that policing, along with many other things in Britain, needs a change of direction. The more you can put up posters, deliver leaflets, speak to your friends, speak to your neighbours, the more likelihood it is that Colin Sutton wins on July the 16th. And he won't just be, if he wins, a Norfolk figure, he'll be a national figure. With that elected legitimacy behind him, any time there is a big crime, police, law and order, sentencing story that comes up, it'll be Colin Sutton that the BBC programmes want. So there is much to gain by putting our shoulders to the wheel and supporting Colin Sutton in this campaign. I will hand you back to David Bick and I'll rejoin you a little later in the evening. Thank you very much.